Hey there, and welcome to the Business of Business podcast. Here we are two daughters and their dad, seeking to inspire and educate you to follow your dreams of being in business by teaching you the business of being in business. The good, the bad, the humor are all parts of our unique perspective as an entrepreneurial family. Thanks for joining us. So grab a coffee, turn up the volume. Here we go. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Business of Business podcast, Two Daughters and Their Dad. I am your host, Staci Joy Dempsey, and the J is very important because it's what brings all the joy. And I have with me, as always, thankfully, the other daughter and the dad, Jack and Jennifer. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
And we are still practicing our social distancing by doing our podcast via Zoom. And I think we have a returning pop-up guest with us, Miss Eva Willow. So to our listeners, she popped up on a previous podcast as Jennifer rubs her forehead like Dad usually does when it's no words or really should be spoken, just body language of, we're going to get through it. So shout out to Eva Willow for being our pop-up sponsor today. And so today's podcast is going to be, different than our previous podcast because we are going to be going over some questions that our listeners have sent in, which is so exciting to us. And so shout out to all of our listeners who sent in some pretty solid questions that I'm excited to hear Dad and Jennifer give their perspective on, because I think these are probably questions that many people may have. So I'm just going to start out with the very first one. And so this question comes from a listener who says, how do you get permits and or licenses, and when do you start to get them? So, Dad, I'll throw that one to you to start out with.
Yeah, very good question. I think, there's different areas that you would be addressing there. So, for example, if you were, needing to do some type of building or build out, and there's certainly permits, building permits, township permits, anything to do with the actual construction or reconstruction or build out of the space for your business is going to require that. So I think one of the things that Jennifer and I were fortunate when she was building out her hair studio was we were able to connect with a gentleman contractor who had done that type of work before. He knew the process. He knew when, and he knew what permits. And so that would be one suggestion, would if you're doing some type of building or build out, to house your business or to operate your business, if possible, connect with someone who has experience doing that for your type of business, because they're going to have a good handle then on what is required from a permit standpoint. Now, when it comes to specific permits, now Jennifer, even in our business, there's certain licensing things that have to be filed with your state. So if you are, have to have those kind of things, obviously you need to do your research to say, okay, when do I need to have my, my licenses, my, anything that I need to operate in the state that you're operating in, you just need to make sure you research that, because there may be some things that, that need to be displayed in your office. I know, for example, Jennifer has to display things in her office. I have to display things in my office to show, if somebody walks in there, that I have, and we have all the proper licenses for the type of work that we do. So you need to do your research there. As far as just your permits or business licenses, you just need to ask the question. You need to go to your township. You need to go to maybe if your the county seat in the county that you're in, and just ask kind of what kind of permits you might need business permits or business licenses, in order to operate a business. I mean, I would think most things won't go beyond, a county or a township when it comes to business licenses. Those are typically run by the county or the township or the city. So I would say that those would be the places you'd want to go to just find out exactly what you need and the timing of that. So I don't know if Jennifer, you have any other thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, the only other thing I was thinking about is, we wanted to put up a grand opening sign above our business when we first opened, and come to find out we actually needed a permit for that. And I think it was maybe like $50, something like that. So my best advice is of course, there's going to, you need to do your research and you need to figure out what you need and do it early. Don't wait till the last minute to do it. But there are going to be things that come along that you just don't know about. And, your township wants businesses in the township, right? So they're going to work with you. They're going to teach you. They're going to be forgiving of those things. But there's always going to be, things that fall through the cracks just because you've never done it before. Obviously, now I know if we want to hang a big banner, we need a permit for that in our township. So, obviously there's things that you can research and figure out. And then there's going to be things that you kind of just learn along the way. That's entrepreneurship at its finest for us, right? Learning as we go.
Yeah, I think the other thing too was, when Jennifer started with her business, there was definitely some hiccups. And number one, I think also if you can become familiar with who your mayor is, who's sitting in your county clerk office. I've had clients say, they started going to township and county meetings just to kind of understand like who is who. And I know there was at one point in Jennifer's process that, I think we had all done our due diligence and research and whatnot. And finally it was like, you know what, I have this relationship that's, we've had since I was a kid, the mayor of the town that has known our family for a long time. And it was like, this is kind of like my last step, and making the phone call to say, hey, listen, we're just trying to get this done. Can you either tell me what I need to do or put me, in contact with the right person? Because I just feel like maybe I'm just not connecting with the right people to get the right information in a timely manner. So I know feedback that I've gotten from clients is that, before they, kind of started their business, they kind of became more familiar with, who's the who in their township, and just started, kind of seeing what relationships they could start to build there to potentially help the process. I also know for contractors, a big thing is that they can't get their actual license until they have insurance in place, which kind of sounds a little bit backwards, but but I know a lot of contractors that go and they apply for their license and they have to meet an insurance requirement that they may not feel like they're totally ready for, or like the insurance isn't necessarily needed because they don't have any work scheduled, but that is a requirement that they needed in order to meet, to get their actual license. So that's something in the contractor world I know is pretty important and can certainly hold up the process a little bit when it comes to getting a license.
Plus, going back to what Jennifer was saying about the signage, that's a good point, because you're talking about the banner, but signage can be a big deal too, because townships many times will have very specific requirements on what you can do as far as signage for your business. I know when we, when we wanted to kind of update and redo our signage, I was looking at the digital sign, where you could put, messages up and priced it all out, only to come to find out, luckily I had not pulled the trigger on it, was that our township didn't allow those. They didn't allow for digital signs. So as a matter of fact, I learned later that there was a business that went through and they spent like $30,000 on this very nice digital sign only to find out that it was not allowed, once they'd done the work. So it was a real mess. So signage is very important. So you definitely want to make sure you have a line of sight on what you can do in terms of that. So, you definitely want to be careful. And, and you bring up insurance, even though the listener question was about permits and licenses. Insurance is another thing that you can take people by surprise when you're starting out. How much that's going to cost. And I know we just had an inquiry in our business. Someone was looking to open up a business, and they were smart. They looked into, okay, what all do I need? What's it going to cost? They really did their homework. Because, depending on the business, there is a lot of upfront insurance costs that you might have to lay out before, you have any cash flow to your business. So that's another area that you want to make sure you have a good understanding of before you kind of step in and try to open the doors and realize, you have to lay out maybe quite a few $1,000s for insurance to actually, get up and running.
Well, and also on the insurance, that's why it's also very important that you work with an actual insurance agent, because, if you try to go online and get, say, the requirements that someone is, say that you need to have to either get into your brick and mortar spot, or that you need to, in order to get a license or a permit, working with an actual insurance agent, they'll be able to help you actually, literally customize the coverage so that you can get into doing what you need to do and then change your policy as you go, so that perhaps, rather than just going to the internet, you won't have such a bigger upfront cost. And you just have somebody that can help you actually work through those coverages to get you where you need to be. But
I wonder who would be a good choice there.
I mean,
I have an agent. Anybody can reach out to me. I can hook you up.
There you go.
That's right. Dempsey.
Well, actually, I didn't bring that up for you to plug insurance agents, but good job. That was good.
Well, I mean, but honestly, it's the truth, because a lot of people, they go to the internet and, it's very cut and dry. I mean, I've had people come to me that they say, I've had the cover, I've had this coverage through, they don't even know anybody, don't know someone. And, by talking with me and working with me, or other people in our office, the rates are just better. And again, if you're a hair studio, there's certain coverages that you need, and there's other coverages that are not applicable to you. But, just going to the internet, you just get a cookie cutter coverage with a price tag attached to it. And I've had clients say, like, I just figured out a way to pay it. I just wanted to get open. I just needed to get my, my license. And so I just figured out a way to pay it, and then put that on the back burners. Next question. Why did you want to start the podcast? So Jack, so this was Dad's idea. Dad pulled us all together and, really shared his vision of, and kind of realization that working with Jennifer and getting her business open, that a lot of the same challenges that he has faced in the last 35 plus years of being in business were the same struggles and challenges that Jennifer was facing in getting her place open and getting, and just, really getting the ball rolling. And so some of these problems or some of these challenges are really, fairly universal. Obviously insurance and hair studio are two different ends of the spectrum when it comes to, the actual work that is done, but the challenges are still the same. Jack, Jennifer, you guys want to chime in on that?
Yeah, and I think when you're thinking about opening a business, I mean, I was just so fortunate. And I tell people all the time that, yes, obviously he's my dad and he's always been there for me. But right behind that he's been an entrepreneur for so long. So navigating the waters of entering entrepreneurship or opening a business is so much work. And so, of course, I know all the hair things, or actually how to do hair, but to open a business, I mean, it was an amazing journey because we learned so much. And obviously, if I didn't have the answer, then dad did. Or if I was scared to do something, he pushed me a little bit harder to do it. So it was just a wonderful partnership. So I always encourage people, if you're looking to start a business, you really need someone in your corner that has already walked the path that you're ready to walk, because it just makes it easier, just a little bit easier. And when I was frustrated, he was not. So it was just it was a wonderful process. At the same time, I will tell you, being a woman, and not only a woman but a young woman, I definitely noticed a difference when I walked in by myself than when me and dad walked in. Does that make sense? Especially because we actually had the first building that we wanted to go with. And I just flat out, the guy just didn't take me serious and didn't respect me. But then dad came and it was a whole different conversation. So obviously we didn't go with that first building that we had in mind. And it just wasn't meant to be. But that was very frustrating for me. You remember, dad? He just didn't take me seriously. But then when dad got involved, it was kind of a whole different situation. And I think when dad saw that, he's like, okay, we're just walking away from this situation because this is just not a good relationship to start out with.
I mean, I think going back, I mean, even before Jennifer and I started working together and opening her business in insurance and investments, we built a business around that. And I look around, in our industry and just see where, people come in to this business and they get training on how to sell insurance or how to work with clients regarding investment planning. But they really are not equipped to train people on how to do the business of those things. I've been, really talking about this topic for many years. And then when I started working with Jennifer, and again, just saw the parallels of, all right, well, the same things that she's, dealing with or trying to get done are the same things that I'm trying to do in many ways in my business. So you saw the parallels. And now when we think back, I mean, let's just think about some of our guests, right? I mean, we have, we had where someone knew how to make delicious desserts and
Yep.
candies and all those things. But then there was the business of doing that, or we had the guest who obviously was very good at, going in and doing home renovations and doing, just kind of having the real talent for that. But then there was doing the business of that. So we've just seen, kind of this play out, with our guests that, they had certain skills or passions, things that they really wanted to do. But then when you had like Jennifer, and then when you put the business side of that, it's hard. And so that's really where this came from. It's like, with technology and the ability to do podcasts, it's a very easy way to, be able to talk about these things. And hopefully people who, our listeners plugging in or, plugging in to, be able to learn from mistakes or get ideas that, it's going to help them in building out their business.
Good stuff. So have you started any other businesses and how did they do? Jen, I know you started,
And that's like a very vague question, but yeah.
Well, I mean, you've started another profit center in your business.
Right.
And so how's that going right now?
I think that after you start one business, you get excited to develop into different profit centers. We did. So my second profit center was going online. and being able to, sell our products online, which has a bunch of other challenges that come along with it. I'm glad that we have done that, because I do believe it's the wave of the future. And I think that just when you talk about starting businesses and then adding profit centers or starting other businesses, there has to be a passion behind it, or, I think it gets lost in the shuffle. It's just about evolving where you start your business and over the years, where are you taking it? So keeping up with the times, I think it was absolutely necessary. I know there's still some salons that like write appointments down on appointment books, like pen and paper, which they're just lost with the times, right? So I think that that's the biggest thing in business. It's just keeping up with keeping up.
Yeah.
Right. Like if your restaurant is not on Uber Eats, then like you're not keeping up, right? That's really just what it comes down to, is just continuing to evolve your business into what consumers want now. Yeah. And that takes a lot of hard work. So I would, guys, we're 1 month away from our 5-year anniversary. I just have to say, like, I'm just so proud of myself as an entrepreneur and the businesses that I have created within what started out to just be a dream and a passion. And that's just really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
1 month. We can hold on for one more month. Let's go. We're going to get to 1 month. If it's the last thing we do. Okay. But Jack, have you actually, I'm interested to know this. Have you started any other businesses? Because listen, we don't know. We don't really know what Dad be doing. I know, I do know from our business that from our office and with Jack's mentorship, there have been a lot of agents that have come through our Dempsey Weiss funnel who have gone on to start their own agencies. So maybe not a direct other business, but I know certainly because of Jack's mentorship and being a part of our agency, there have been a lot of other insurance agencies that have been opened, because of him.
But not even insurance. We want to hear about, like, I know Dad invested in like a cleaning company. Obviously he helped, own a hair salon. Like, what does this man do? Like, how many
for those who can't see Dad's face right now, he's like, wait a minute, how did you know about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's those situations. But in my own, and this came up in a prior podcast quite a few years ago now, we did try to add mortgages to our business, and we opened a separate entity for that, and it ultimately failed. And it goes back, in looking back on it, we have different profit centers that have developed within our agency that are doing very well. And what I found is that that came out of developing people first. That we've developed people, we've brought people on, we've developed them, we've trained them, we've empowered them. And then when an opportunity came, we were ready to embrace the opportunity because we had people ready to kind of step in and start to take some ownership of that. And with the mortgages, it was different. It was like, well, we feel like this would be congruent. Remember Michelle's talking, in Exit Rich, talking about it has to be congruent. So we felt like mortgages was still congruent, but the difference was we didn't have anybody kind of ready and developed. We kind of took it on and then tried to bring people in, to kind of take that over and turn that into something. And it was just very difficult for us to do that because it was, they were just bringing some cultural things in, and just ultimately it just wasn't going to work. It was just something we felt like we couldn't continue on with. So that was disappointing because we did invest quite a bit of time and quite a bit of money for it ultimately not to work. But that, I think, is probably the one thing I can point to, over the past, handful of years that we walked through. Now, going back in the day, my first entry into entrepreneurship, as you guys might know, was in 1972 when the town that I grew up in decided to put in sanitary sewage. They went from everything running into pipes and running into the rivers, which is where most sewage went back in those days, to actually putting in a sewage treatment plant. Well, what that required was that they had to dig up all the old sewage pipe, to replace all that, for it to modernize into the sewage treatment plant. Well, I had a morning paper route, so I guess that was probably my first venture into entrepreneurship. But by digging up all of that sewer pipe, it drove all of these sewer rats to the top of the ground, right? Because they were disrupting all this. And I don't know if you've never experienced a sewer rat or 3 or 4 sewer rats at like 6:15 in the morning, riding a bike with the paper bag over your shoulders. It's a bit unnerving. They are not nice creatures. They are big and they are nasty looking and they are nasty. But it turned into a big problem in the community because they were just ravaging. They were getting in people's trash cans. This is an older town, so a lot of the houses, they were getting into people's houses. They were getting into people's gardens. They were everywhere. I mean, they were just running everywhere. So my first true entrepreneurship was actually gathering up a bunch of my buddies, and we started setting traps and capturing sewer rats. And we got paid for it because it was such a problem that the town said, if you get these rats, we'll pay you to do it because they're just messing things up big time.
Staci, is this real life?
I think so, honestly.
I've never heard this story in my life.
No, because I've heard the story of him on his bike and the sewer rat came up and was, chasing him and tried to bite him. So what did you do with where did you put the rats once you caught them? Like, where did you take them? Did you kill them?
Well,
you have to.
I'm going to tell you, yeah. I mean, you don't capture 6-pound sewer rats. You do them other ways. So we started out setting traps, but ultimately, it was your granddad Hines that, I was telling him about it. And he said, well, don't set traps, set decon, the decon poison, that was for that. So we would go and we'd ask people, I said, we'd rather do the decon, and they'd have to, we'd ask them to agree to it because we didn't want their cats or dogs to get into it. So that's what we end up using, mostly decon to get them, which was even nastier in some ways because then you heard them under people's houses. When you crawl under a dark house and there is rats in there that are like half dead that are like squealing at you.
Ugh.
This is when I learned delegation. This is when I learned delegation. I'm like, I don't like this at all. But luckily, there's a couple guys right down the road from my house that just got out of reform school for stealing bikes. And they loved that kind of stuff. They'd crawl under there and they'd take a ball bat with them and they would end those rats' life and come out just happy as can be. So I never did tell them how much I made. I just paid them a little bit of what I made to go in there and do it. And they were happy. I was happy. So there we go. That was my first
successful business.
Yeah. And luckily, if I'd have thought more, because I wasn't that old, because there was no exterminators at the time. You didn't hear about people having an exterminating business. If I would have been a little brighter, I thought, hey, this could be a real business. Unfortunately, it only lasted about 3 weeks, and then all the rats were kind of dispersed. What did I learn? That's what you're wanting to know? Well, I think, again, there's aspects of your business that you find if you don't like it, go find someone who does. And I did not like crawling under houses with poison rats. It was a little more than I wanted to tackle. So I went and found a couple of reform school boys that were just perfectly happy going under there for me.
Right.
The power of delegation. That's the nugget.
There you go. There's somebody for everything. So we really have two more questions here. What should I include in my startup budget? And did yours go as planned? Oh, Jennifer's like, her face is saying, absolutely, it did not. Thank you very much. But what did you include in yours, Jennifer?
I'm thinking of the best answer for that question. I guess there's really not one. But I guess my advice would be to just do as much as you can. Obviously, we started with, actual furniture to start building our budget. Like, how much money will it actually take to start the business? And I'm going to be honest, my original budget was probably $30,000 off of what I needed. So yeah, I mean, I think you just have to start as much as you know. I think what's really, really important is to find as many people to recruit onto your team, meaning who am I going to do insurance with? Who's going to be my accountant, contractor, X, Y, and Z, and really be able to pull information from there, because we truly didn't know how much it was going to cost to build out a space, right, Dad? So, I think I want to say our first, sorry guys, I want to say our first quote to build out a salon was like $100,000, right? And we were like, that just doesn't sound right. But what did we know, right? We never did it before.
Right.
So I guess the another piece of advice was just don't go with the first person that's willing to do it for you, right? Like, I think we had maybe like 6 quotes from 6 different contractors. So it just takes like that rooting through the mud. Like, I really don't know how much this is going to cost. I know how much I don't want to spend. So that's just start asking people and getting some quotes so I can start building a budget around there.
Yeah, I like your advice, Jen. Is definitely, you're going to need certain people. So, if you're going to need a contractor for a build out of a space, you're going to need a website. So what does that look like? Connecting with someone that can do website, getting you linked up on Google so you're easily found. Maybe some SEO depending on what type of business you're in. You're going to need an insurance person. You're going to need an accountant. And just start connecting with those people who can really give you more information on what their services are going to cost. And then I think, I would hope that everyone would kind of know you're going to need, whether it's rent, mortgage, are there bank fees? Where are you going to be banking at? Right. I know that was another big piece for you, Jennifer, was, maybe who you wanted to bank with originally was not necessarily being as easy to work with as you had hoped. So you had to go look some other places. So those are definitely some things to keep in mind. So now I've seen the original first ever written down budget for Dempsey Weiss. That was for a whole year. And I think now that's probably a budget that would equal maybe every 2 weeks or maybe every month for what our office and what our office looks like now. So Jack, when you originally did the budget, was there anything that kind of popped up that you hadn't planned for?
But things were pretty simple at that point. I mean, you kind of knew the categories and you knew what you were dealing with. And I'm sure there was some surprise. My biggest advice, though, is to do a budget. Sit down, try to think through all the categories. And again, in today's world, this is where it goes back to, having that mentor, having, people around you that you can, share that with, to say, am I missing any categories? Am I in the right ballpark with these numbers? Because again, it's just, as Jen said, you're not going to get it right, but you'd be surprised. I always am, even now when we do our quarterly budget meetings and then our annual budget meetings. When we establish a budgets, it's much more involved now than it was back when we started, but we're never, we're never very far off with our numbers. I mean, we're pretty close every year. Now, we might be far off in a category, but another category made up for it, somehow, some way. So the bottom line is always, within a very small margin of error. But but you got to have a budget. You got to write it down. You got to track. You really do need to do those things. It's a big, big, big part, of being an entrepreneur. So do a budget, write it out, get it down, share it with people that, and just get feedback on it, I think would be my best answer to that question.
Yeah, well, I can remember. I'm sure this wasn't from your startup budget, but I can remember you telling us a story about a fax machine went in the office, and you had to buy a new one, but the budget at the time, the company budget didn't allow for it, and so you and Dave had to go and take it from your I guess your personal savings. And at the time, mom and Dave's wife got really upset that because fax machines were not cheap
Right.
at that time, and was really, really necessary to have it. And I think it was, a little like maybe it was the first time that ever had to be done. And um, the wives were crying a little bit, but it's what needed to be done. So probably not from the startup budget, but part of the budget it's somewhere along the line. So
Well, and that's it brings up a good point. And, one of the things I've seen, haven't experienced it, but I've seen is where you do get off track. And now all of a sudden you're starting to put your money, what you've kind of personal money back into the business. You have to be careful with that. I've seen where, business owners, because, you've invested so much time, so much energy and resources into building a business, and things aren't going well for whatever reason, the economy or whatever it may be, COVID-19 or something like that. And you just believe in your business so much that you're starting to just take money from your personal investments to keep your business going. And I've just seen where, you've just held on, people have held on too long, only to the inevitable to happen and the business to go, south, and there you can't get your money back out. So.
right. Yeah, no, I've definitely heard those stories as well. And it's really sad. People have taken out second mortgages on their home. And, ultimately for the business to have to, really be closed out. And now they're paying for a house the second time around, or scared that they're not going to be able to make those payments because their business just went out. Just got
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to taking risk, I mean, obviously risk reward. If you talk to any business coach, they're always going to tell you, you never put your house, in jeopardy, to keep your business. You never risk personal, bankruptcy,
Right.
to keep your business going. So there's an old saying out there that, a barn will build a house, but a house won't build a barn. So you've got to make sure that you're just being very careful with that, or you could really that business could end up being something that's really going to straddle your finances for years to come, maybe the rest of your life.
Last question. If you were to start a business today, what are the first three things you would consider that you missed the first time?
Well, the challenge for me, I think, is in thinking about that question is really just the change that's happened since we started our business. I mean, quite honestly, there were no computers, there were no cell phones, fax machines, barely. So business and growing a business was much more linear, meaning that it was it was just a progression of steps. You just took one step to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. Today, the challenge is, and the opportunity, because of technology, things are moving so much faster that nothing moves in a linear way. It's moving more in an exponential way, which means you take a step, well, your next step, has to be 5 steps, because you have to be able to move quickly. Now, by the same token, proper utilization of technology allows you to do that. If you're embracing technology, it should allow you to move at that faster pace too. But we didn't have that when we started. It was just a more, kind of a one thing, next thing, and it was very predictable, I guess is the best way. So I would just really rather answer that question is if I was starting my business today, the thing that I would be focusing in on would be 2 things, and that would be, people and processes, and then technology kind of feeding those 2 things, how to let technology, drive your business. But you got to have good people, and you got to have a solid process.
Yeah, I'm over here trying to thinking hard about that question. I think one of the challenges that I didn't pay too much mind to 5 years ago was employees and the people that you need for your business. I think I would take that much more serious now. If I were to open another business now, because it is so important to have good people on your team that share the same vision as you, that kind of want the same things as you. That's definitely a very, I think, if not the most difficult part about being owning a business would be employees. And not just my business. I hear that from so many different kind of businesses. I mean, right now, guys, people are struggling to hire good people for whatever reason. I don't have the answer to why. The first time ever in my business, I have been struggling to hire right now. So I don't know why that is, but it's definitely a huge challenge. The second part, I think, what people need to consider before opening a business would be what you want for your life. I think that, again, 5 years ago, it was straight tunnel vision, like this is all I want. But sometimes we forget about growth and what else is coming. So right now, I'm starting to think of like what's next. And like what does long-term my career looks like? Not just, I will literally do anything, give my left arm to open this business. And now it's like, all right, okay. Because listen, being an entrepreneur, like burnout is real, guys, and I'm feeling it and trying to adjust to that. So I think when you're just so excited and it's really all you want, once you are committed to that for so many years, you're like, okay, there has to be an easier way. So I think there's definitely a difference between a business that you actually physically have to be in every single day versus a business that you can do from anywhere. You truly have freedom of time. I mean, those are just 2 different complete categories. So I would ask myself, do I actually have to physically be inside the business producing? Or is this the type of business that I can go anywhere, do anything, kind of work my business from wherever I am, and I don't actually have to physically be inside the business, because there are 2 different ways of life. But at the same time, entrepreneurship is amazing. I love it. I wouldn't change it for the world. But like any job, there's always challenges and hardships that come along with it. There's no like right or wrong answer, to be honest.
I totally agree. Awesome.
Stace,
Well,
would you open a business in 2021? Let's just say
good question.
like a brick and mortar, like a smoothie shop.
I don't really know. I don't think so. Would I do something that, I'm my own boss? I would, but I don't know if I would necessarily open up a brick and mortar spot that I had to physically be in from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Now, there's nothing to say, there's nothing wrong with that. There's some people that's what they love. They enjoy all of that. They want to do all of that. And, again, I think there's places and positions for everyone. So it's just following what you ultimately really want to do. And go from there. So awesome. Oh, Jack, you're muted. Don't lose that nugget. All right, there we go.
The one thing I would say, if you're doing, like you mentioned, like a smoothie shop, now if you can have a vision for having 5 smoothie shops,
right,
and being able then to manage that, then that might be, if it's scalable. But yeah, I think you're right. I think you have to be careful if it's something that, ultimately, and I think that's where you're going, Jen, with your business, is that, you have to begin to think about, what does my business look like? How do I scale my business so that's generating what I needed to generate, but I'm not having to, just be, so engaged in it day in and day out. So I just think that's your next step. And I'll also add, the one thing I also learned from, my business that I started in 1972, Janet, is that you have to be careful about distractions, because about a week and a half in, I'm like, man, this thing's really going good. I got a bunch of my buddies, they're getting these rats for me. I'm not having to do it. And, it's just like, I'm making some money. I've never seen this kind of money before. So, it was just humming along. And then all of a sudden, a new girl moves into the neighborhood, Judy. And she happened to be like the most beautiful girl that ever walked the face of the earth. And now all of my buddies were completely distracted because all they wanted to do was to get, be able to ride Judy on the back of their bike.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, come on, stay focused. So you have to watch for distractions.
All distractions are equal, even if their name is Judy. So shout out to all the Judys that are listening right now. Perhaps the Judy that moved in on the block is listening right now. So how about that? Well, good questions today, listeners. Great answers, Jennifer and Jack. And so we want to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, keep the questions coming. Email us at 2daughters, that's TWO, 2daughters and their dad @gmail.com. And we appreciate everyone for tuning in. Be sure to share our podcasts with your family, with your friends. Don't keep us a secret. We are always excited when we see new listeners who are downloading us. So again, please just share us. And until we can all be together again, thank you for listening. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Bye-bye. We want to thank you for listening today. Please subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave us a positive review. And we want to say thank you to our sponsors, Dempsey Weiss & Associates and J.Faith Hair Studio.